When we visualize the Roman legions, the image that usually comes to mind is one of violence and steel. We picture the glitter of armor under the Mediterranean sun, the disciplined lock of shield walls, and the brutal stabbing efficiency of the short sword, the gladius. But the true secret to Rome's conquest of the known world was not just in how they fought, it was in how they slept. Every single night, whether the army was deep in the dark forests of Germania, the arid deserts of Syria, or the damp, fog-laden highlands of Scotland, a Roman legion on the march would do something incredible. They would construct a fortified city from scratch. In a matter of hours, thousands of men would transform a patch of raw wilderness into an impregnable fortress, complete with streets, drainage systems, defensive walls, and a strictly regimented address system. This was the Castra Aestiva, the summer marching camp. It was often said that a Roman enemy might defeat the legion in battle, but they would break their teeth on the legion's camp. This is the story of the engineering marvel that allowed Rome to project power further and faster than any civilization before it. To the Roman military mind, engineering was not merely a support function, it was a combat arm, equal in importance to the cavalry or the infantry. The Jewish historian Josephus, who observed the Roman war machine up close in the 1st century AD, noted that the Romans did not wait for battle to commence to build walls. Instead, he wrote, "They do not pass the night in a place that is not fortified." This strategic philosophy was built on 3 pillars. The first was security. A fortified camp meant the army could never be fully surprised at night. It guaranteed the soldiers a restful sleep, untroubled by the fear of ambush. This kept morale high and physical stamina intact. The second pillar was the concept of the camp as an offensive base. It was not just a retreat, it was a forward operating base. It served as a secure depot for heavy baggage, supplies, and the wounded, allowing the fighting men to deploy into battle unencumbered by heavy packs. The third pillar was psychological warfare. Consider the perspective of a barbarian host. They would watch a Roman army arrive in their territory, and within a few hours, they would see a formidable geometric fortress rise from the earth, where there had been nothing but grass that morning. It was demoralizing. It signaled that the Romans were not just visiting, they were taking ownership of the land itself. The marching camp turned hostile territory into Roman soil, 1 square mile at a time. It was the physical manifestation of order imposed upon chaos. But how did they achieve this feat daily? Long before the main column of the legion arrived at the night's destination, a vanguard of specialists had already done the most critical work. These were the mensors or measurers, and the grammatici, the surveyors, usually led by a tribune or a senior centurion. Their first task was site selection. A perfect site required a Goldilocks combination of features. They needed specific terrain, ideally a gentle slope to facilitate drainage, and high ground for defense and visibility. They needed resources, specifically proximity to wood for construction and fuel, water, as a legion drank thousands of gallons a day, and forage for the baggage animals. Finally, they needed safety. The site could not be overlooked by higher ground, where an enemy could rain missiles down upon them, nor could it be near dense cover that might hide an ambush. Once the site was chosen, the grammatici employed the groma, the standard Roman surveying instrument. It consisted of a vertical staff supporting a horizontal cross with plumb lines hanging from each of the 4 ends. By sighting along these plumb lines, the surveyor could lay out perfectly straight lines and right angles. The process began by marking the locus grammaticus, the absolute center point of the camp. From this single point, the entire city would unfurl. The surveyors would drive a stake, called the decumanus, into the ground, and measure out the 2 main axes. The first was the via praetoria, the axis pointing toward the enemy. The second was the via principalis, the axis running perpendicular to the praetoria, spanning the width of the camp. Using colored flags, red for the commander and white for the tribunes, the surveyors marked out the exact location of every tent, street, and gate. By the time the tired infantrymen trudged into view, the city was already mapped on the grass. Every soldier knew exactly where his tent belonged relative to the flags. There was no confusion, no shouting for directions. A legion of 5,000 men could dissolve into their assigned sectors in minutes. The genius of the Roman camp lay in its standardized defenses. A soldier transferred from Hadrian's Wall in Britannia to the Parthian frontier in the east would find the camp layout exactly the same. This uniformity bred efficiency. The defensive perimeter consisted of 3 integrated components, built simultaneously by the legionaries. The first line of defense was the fossa, or the ditch. Soldiers used their pickaxes and shovels to dig a V-shaped trench. Typically, this was 3 feet deep and 5 feet wide for a temporary camp, though it was often larger in hostile territory. A particularly nasty feature of the fossa was the ankle breaker. The bottom of the trench often featured a square channel, a cleaning slot, which also served to twist the ankle of anyone foolish enough to jump into it. The earth excavated from the ditch was not thrown away. It was thrown inward to create the second line of defense, the agger, or the rampart. To prevent the loose earth from slumping, the base was often reinforced with turf blocks cut like bricks, or with timber logs if available. The combination of the ditch depth, and the rampart's height created a vertical differential of 6 to 8 feet. This was a formidable obstacle for an attacker trying to fight uphill. The crowning glory of the defenses was the vallum, or the palisade. Unlike medieval armies that might cut down trees on sight, the Roman legionary carried his own wall with him. Each soldier carried 2 pila muralia, or wall stakes, effectively as part of his marching kit. These were sturdy oak stakes, double-pointed and narrowed in the middle to form a waist. When the soldiers reached the rampart, they planted these stakes into the soft earth of the agger. The stakes were tied together at the waist with ropes or leather thongs. The double points meant that even if an enemy pulled a stake out, they could not easily use it as a weapon, and the interlocking design meant you could not pull one stake out without dismantling the whole section. The camp typically had 4 gates, one on each side. These were the weak points, so Roman engineers developed specific defensive geometries for them. One was the titulus, a short, detached stretch of ditch and rampart dug a few yards in front of the gate. It forced a charging enemy to swerve around it, exposing their unshielded right side to the defenders on the wall. Another design was the clavicula, an extension of the rampart that curved inward or outward, forcing attackers to enter the gate at an angle, again disrupting their momentum and shield wall. The speed of construction was the stuff of legend. Ancient sources suggest a full marching camp could be completed in 3 to 5 hours. This was achieved through a massive, coordinated assembly line. As soon as the legion arrived, they did not rest. They stacked their armor and weapons, except for a dagger, and pulled out their construction tools. About 20% of the force remained fully armed, standing guard at the perimeter to protect the workers. The bulk of the infantry began digging the ditch. Others, the shapers, packed the earth into the rampart. Specialists known as carpenters worked on the gates and the commander's tribunal. The Roman soldier was half warrior, half construction worker. His kit included the dolabra, the most famous tool. It was a combination pickaxe and mattock. The axe side cut through roots, while the pick side broke up hard clay. It was so effective it was often used as a weapon in emergencies. They also carried the batillum, an iron shovel for moving loose earth, and turf cutters, crescent-shaped blades used to slice standardized blocks of sod for wall facing. They used wicker baskets to haul earth from the ditch to the rampart. The result was a hive of activity, thousands of men working in silence or to the rhythm of whistles, moving tons of earth before the sun set. Once the walls were up, the city inside came alive. The interior was a grid of tents, called papilio, organized by cohort and century. Between the rampart and the first row of tents was a clear space of about 60 meters called the intervallum. This served 2 vital purposes. First, it was range safety. It kept the soldiers' tents out of range of enemy arrows or javelins thrown over the wall. Second, it was a deployment zone. In the event of a night attack, the troops would rush to the intervallum to form up before mounting the ramparts, ensuring they did not stumble over tents in the dark. The basic unit of life was the contubernium or tent group. 8 men shared a leather tent, roughly 10 feet by 10 feet. 6 men would sleep while 2 were on watch. The 9th recruit of the group was the mule, which carried the heavy leather tent, the millstone for grinding grain, and the cooking pot. At the intersection of the main streets lay the Principia, the headquarters and heart of the camp. Here stood the praetorium, the commander's large tent, and the tribunal, an earth mound where the general could address the troops. There was also the auguratorium, a space for taking religious auspices. Most importantly, this area housed the standards. The legion's eagle, the aquila, and other standards were kept here in a makeshift shrine. They were the soul of the legion and were guarded day and night. The Romans were also obsessed with hygiene. Even in a temporary camp, latrines were dug on the outskirts, usually near the lowest point of the slope for drainage, and downstream from the water source. The strict regulation of waste prevented dysentery, the great killer of ancient armies. Archaeologists and historians track the evolution of the camp through 2 main sources. The first is the Polybian camp from around 150 BC, described by the Greek historian Polybius. This Republican-era camp was square. It reflected a militia army organized by property class, such as the hastati, principes, and triarii. It was spacious and focused on the consul's tent. The second is the Hygienian camp from around the 2nd century AD, described in a text attributed to Pseudo-Hyginus. This imperial-era camp was rectangular with rounded corners, often called the playing card shape. This layout was more compressed and efficient, reflecting the professionalized legions of the empire. It optimized space for the auxiliary troops such as archers and cavalry that had become crucial to Roman warfare. The most remarkable thing about Roman marching camps is that many did not stay temporary. Rome's strategy was to advance, fortify, and consolidate. If a general decided to winter in a location, the leather tents were replaced by timber barracks. If the frontier stabilized, the timber was replaced by stone. The ditch became a moat, and the palisade became a curtain wall. Many great cities of Europe began as Roman marching camps. The suffix Chester or Castor in English place names, such as Manchester, Lancaster, and Chester, comes from the Latin word castra. Cities like Vienna, Strasbourg, and Cologne all sit on the footprints of legionary camps. The grid of the Roman camp became the grid of the medieval city, which became the street plan of the modern metropolis. The Roman marching camp was more than a defense. It was a machine. It converted human labor into safety and strategic dominance. It allowed the Romans to march into the unknown, carrying their civilization on their backs. When the sun set over the barbarian wilderness, the Roman soldier did not sleep in the wild. He slept in Rome, or at least a perfectly engineered facsimile of it, protected by a wall he had built with his own hands. In the end, Rome did not just conquer the world with the sword, they conquered it with the shovel.